And we're back with year 3 of the WWSY Hockey League, celebrating the 10-year anniversary of this channel. And it looks like free agency is not too big of a deal this year, as there is Kelly, Sheffield, Shields, and that is about it. Wow. So I suppose we'll keep track of where those few players go. Then we'll head into the entry draft, which of course is just going to be seeing the draft log, because we can't actually go into it since we're not part of a team. And it appears all the good free agents have signed already, which, you know, very few of them in the first place. I believe it was Gary Shields, right? Yep, he goes to the Wolfsburg Wolves after spending 2 years with the Salt Lake City Lakers. James Kelly also goes to the Wolfsburg Wolves after spending 2 years with Seattle. And then Pete Sheffield goes to the Halifax Tugboats after spending 2 years with Seattle as well. And that is just about it. Yeah, there's not much going on here in this offseason, it appears, at least so far. And it is July 8th, so let's check out the entry draft log. Going first overall to the Wolfsburg Wolves was Darren Hartley. Looks like he's going to be a 1.5 star out of the gates. I'd imagine he's going to play because most of the team's rosters, from what I've noticed, do still have quite a few 1-star and even half-star players. So I'd imagine most of these prospects, or at least most of the ones that get selected high, will be able to play pretty much immediately. And then you have Nick Markovich, who was selected by the Halifax Tugboats. Noel Lowry gets selected by the Tokyo Katanas. Very good offensive player, it looks like. Then you have Mike Robertson going to the Checking Lions. Another good offensive player. Then you have Han Yong-tak from the Salt Lake City Lakers. Victor Bergstrom going to the Fargus Holy Knights. You have Victor Hedval going to the Seattle Emeralds. And then to the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies at number 8, you have Ivers Zilgavis. And then to the Christmas Elfrings, you have Dave Decker. And at number 10, to the Nova Scotia Supernovas, you have Glenn Winters. And that rounds out the first round. And a couple other notable picks here who are 1.5 star ability are Mikhail Peksa to the Wolfsburg Wolves at number 11. And at number 13, you have Elliot Ouellette to the Tokyo Katanas. And that'll be about it for 1.5 star players. Oh, I think this has been the most notable trades so far this offseason. Jerry Marshall headed from the Fargus Holy Knights to Seattle in exchange for a 5th round pick. And here is the season preview for year number 3. So the cup favorites appear to be Atlantic City, led by Chris Keaton, and they can expect challenges from the Wolfsburg Wolves and Seattle Emeralds. I mean, I don't know about Wolfsburg. They had a pretty bad year last year. I believe they were last in the league, yeah. So that'll be interesting to see if they can rebound after their poor performance last year. And I believe Seattle, yeah, they did pretty well last year, 47 wins total. And they do have a pretty good roster, of course, led by Paul Sutherland. So I could certainly see them doing some damage. And the Christmas Elfrings are apparently a dark horse this year, led by Dave Lively, very good offensive defenseman. And the scoring race will likely be between Chris Keaton, I mean, we all knew that, Justin McNeil of the Checking Lions, and Kaksangir Isazanli from the Nova Scotia Supernovas. That name gets me every time. Top defenseman in the league is generally considered to be Tokyo Katana's blue liner Valentin Ivanov, with Paul Sutherland of Seattle and Maxim Banchikov of the Checking Lions also in the running. Then among goaltenders, you have Nate McCormack of the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies standing out as the best, with Mark Carroll of the Nova Scotia Supernovas and Lucas Bues of the Tokyo Katanas being right behind him. Ooh, I'll be surprised if the Supernovas are able to do much this year. Their roster's looking kind of weak. Compared to the rest of the league anyway, and especially compared to Atlantic City. My goodness, I mean, they haven't won a championship yet, but I would not be surprised if this was the year for them. With that being said, let's get through year number 3 in the WWSY Hockey League. Ooh, that's a big injury. Sutherland out for 3 months for Seattle. That's a big one for them. Ooh, Cliff Tincher for the Elfrings out for 3 months as well. Oh, it looks like we have some trade deadline rumors here. We're on January 1st, and Seattle's apparently shopping Lois Rivard, the 38-year-old veteran who has been with 3 teams so far. Still a very capable player despite his age, so I would imagine he has quite a few interested teams there. Oh, this is a first. I'm surprised this didn't happen earlier. I have a job offer apparently from the Checking Lions. I'm going to reject that because, you know, I'm the commissioner, but I'm surprised that didn't happen before year number 3. So I guess the Checking Lions must be, yeah, they're not in a great position there. Yeah, they're in 10th in the league right now. Despite having some good players in Banchikov and McNeil, they appear to be struggling. Oh, we have a bit of a notable trade here. The Checking Lions sending Pokokov to the Nova Scotia Supernovas in exchange for a 3rd round pick. Oh, look at this. We got a big one here. Patrice Grayson, the 4-star talent, going to Seattle in exchange for a 1st round pick from the Wolfsburg Wolves. So Wolfsburg clearly looking to rebuild now. And I mean, they are currently inside the playoffs. They're 79 points, but obviously that is not the best position as they're only 6 points in front of the Salt Lake City Lakers. Anything could happen still. So time will tell if that was the right move for them or not. Oh, another pretty big trade here. You got Heike Swampera going to the Emeralds in exchange for a 2nd round pick, also going to the Wolfsburg Wolves. So Wolfsburg stacking up on draft picks there. And on the trade deadline, is there anything happening here? Looks like a pretty minor trade between Wolfsburg and the Tugboats. Jari Lottinen goes to Halifax in exchange for Ben Wagner. A very minor trade between Halifax and the Christmas Elf Rings. Another minor trade between Fargus and the Christmas Elf Rings. Another minor trade between Nova Scotia and Atlantic City. Another minor trade between the Halifax Tugboats and the Wolfsburg Wolves. Yeah, it seems to be a lot of these kind of nothing trades going on here. David Carroll from Mickey Joe. Yeah, not much going on here. And the regular season of year number 3 has come to an end. The Christmas Elf Rings finished first with the record of 43-5-22-7 with 143 points on the season. The Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies finished second with 138 points. The Halifax Tugboats not far behind with 138 points of their own. So it seems that the tiebreaker went to Atlantic City, probably due to their overtime and shootout wins being 8 compared to 7. And then the Seattle Emeralds came in 4th with 130. The Fargus Holy Knights in 5th with 117. The Nova Scotia Supernovas in 6th with 116. The Wolfsburg Wolves in 7th with 112. The Tokyo Katanas in 8th with 108. And the 2 teams sitting outside the playoffs this year are the Salt Lake City Lakers and the Checking Lions. So the champion last year, being the Salt Lake City Lakers, are outside the playoffs this year. So it seems the parity in this league is pretty wild so far, I gotta say, based on what we've seen, especially with Halifax being outside the playoffs last year, and they had made the finals the year before. And now they're back inside the play. Not only are they back inside the playoffs, they had a very good year, being 49 wins total. So this is certainly seems like a league where basically anything could happen. Now let's check out the team stats. Leading in scoring were the Christmas Elf Rings with a 3.23 goals for per game. And then leading in goals against per game were the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies with a 2.22. Very good defensively. The power play, the Halifax Tugboats with a 20.7. lead the league on the power play. And on the penalty kill, the Wolfsburg Wolves with an 87.2 lead the way there. And now for the player stats. So leading the league in scoring is Artem Portnenko. So Chris Keaton is dethroned. And though he's still got over 100 points, he is no longer the league leader, as Artem Portnenko of the Fargus Holy Knights dethrones him, and he gets 100 points for the first time in his career. Bob Cunningham also got 100 points for the first time in his career. So there's 3 100-point getters this year. Then followed up by Irving Hollick of the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies, Ronnie Davies of the Halifax Tugboats, Ivan Furzin of the Nova Scotia Supernovas, and you have Radim Kopetsky of the Halifax Tugboats. Texier, Issa Zanley, and Bork round out the top 10. And now let's check out goaltenders, and let's say a minimum of 20 games played. So it looks like the highest save percentage goes to Carroll of the Nova Scotia Supernovas at a 925 in 61 games played. 10 shutouts for Nate McCormack of the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies with a 920 save percentage. My goodness. You have 8 shutouts for Lucas Bues of the Tokyo Katanas and a 915 save percentage. It looks like the average save percentage in this league is going to be around 914 or so, at least based off what we're seeing here, as David at the bottom with a 906 in 26 games played. So overall, it seems like a pretty low scoring league here that we've had. As we see the league history, yeah, goals per game were definitely much higher there in year number 1 than they've been the past 2 years. So I guess we'll see how that progresses as the league develops. Obviously, we always have the option to turn the goals per game up higher. But I think after this year is over, what I want to do is start using percentage of talent from stats. That way player production can sort of influence their growth. I've been avoiding it until now because, you know, there hasn't really been much history for the game to go off of. But I think after these playoffs are over, I want to start using that. So with that being said, let's get into the playoffs and we'll see who wins the championship. So the first round has come to an end. The Christmas Elf Rings have swept the Tokyo Katanas. The Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies just barely squeaked by the Wolfsburg Wolves in 7. The Halifax Tugboats just edge out the Nova Scotia Supernovas in 7, so that finals rematch from 2 years ago goes the other way this time. And the Seattle Emeralds kick out the Fargus Holy Knights in 6. So now it's the Seattle Emeralds versus the Christmas Elf Rings, and the Halifax Tugboats versus the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies in round number 2. And the Christmas Elf Rings have defeated the Seattle Emeralds in 7 games. Meanwhile, the Halifax Tugboats have defeated the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies in 5, meaning the finals is between the Halifax Tugboats and the Christmas Elf Rings. And you have the 3rd place game between the Seattle Emeralds and the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies. And the playoff champions of year number 3 are the Christmas Elf Rings, who go through Tokyo Katanas, the Seattle Emeralds, and the Halifax Tugboats. Good job to the Christmas Elf Rings. And that was a 7-game series as well, so that was quite the final. And then the Seattle Emeralds take 3rd over the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies. And here's the awards for year number 3. The most points award, of course, goes to Artem Portnenko. Goal scorer award goes to Chris Keaton. The goals against award goes to Nate McCormack of the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies. Best defensive defenseman goes to James Curry of the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies. And the best captain goes to Peter Wolf of the Halifax Tugboats. MVP between Portnenko, Cunningham, and Keaton, it is Artem Portnenko of Fargus. The playoff MVP is Bob Cunningham of the Christmas Elf Rings. Rookie of the year between Roger Beers, Victor Bergstrom, and Thomas Monteil, it is Roger Beers of the Checking Lions, 65 points in 81 games played. And defenseman of the year between Dan Price, Martin Lofgren, and Dave Lively, it is Martin Lofgren of the Christmas Elf Rings, 37 points in 75 games played. And the best defensive forward award between Patrice Grayson, Danny Holt, and James Bowering, it is Danny Holt of the Christmas Elf Rings. Goalie of the year between Mark Carroll, Arvid Nielsen, and Nate McCormack, it is Nate McCormack of the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies. The best GM between Dave Collins, Boris Jost, and Calvin Sapunjis, it is Calvin Sapunjis of the Halifax Tugboats. And for the coach of the year between Matt James, Roy Childs, and George Watkins, it is Matt James of the Halifax Tugboats. All right, I think that will about do it for year number 3. And the next one, we will go through year number 4 in the WWSY Hockey League.